Hey everybody, Jonathan Broadbent here, your host of UnWoke Academy. Welcome to another episode. This one we're going to delve into something called an investment policy statement. Don't tune out just yet. I know that has sort of an ambiguous or maybe a strange sounding tone to it, but it is a fundamentally critical document that often hides just outside of sight. So I want to tell a little bit about my background with investment policy statements, how we build them, and most importantly, the significance to you. In the realm of trusts, endowments, foundations, retirement plans, anything where you are managing money on behalf of somebody else, it's fairly common to find an investment policy statement, or IPS for short. The investment policy statement really defines the parameters for the investments. So it makes sense once you start to think of it, but for most people, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, or it's just sort of one of the cogs in the wheel or mechanism that helps people to run financial management. If you imagine for a moment, I'm going to ask you to imagine just for a minute, if you work somewhere that offers a 401k plan, just think if you were asked to come in and help run that plan, what would that look like? Well, I can tell you exactly what that will look like because I've lost track now, tens of thousands of different meetings all over the country on the administration of workplace retirement plans. And that's all kinds of different types of union, non-union, for-profit, not-for-profit. There are all kinds of different types of plans. 401k is probably the most known, but there are lots and lots of different types of plans. And in that setting, imagine for a moment you go into a boardroom somewhere. And this is the strange part for a lot of people. When you step into that boardroom, you kind of have to take off your individual hat and start thinking in terms of what's best for the group. What is the right move? What are the right moves to make for all of your coworkers? That includes you, but it's not just you. And in that setting, there are all kinds of rules that kind of govern because let's face it, some bad people through the years have done bad things, and regulations have been brought about to try to stop the bad people from doing the bad things. And there are all kinds of things. If you've ever ventured anywhere close to that, if you're an accountant or you've taken any law classes, you've probably heard of at least something called ERISA. ERISA dates back to 1974. There are a lot of laws governing what you can and can't do. So imagine the bad guys for a minute, and hopefully for all of my listening audience, that takes some imagination, because hopefully you're not one of the bad guys. But imagine you were a bad guy and you step into that room. There are all kinds of things that you could do to twist and manipulate the workplace retirement plan in a way that would benefit you. You could accept gifts, and you could accept extra money or bonuses from the company that other employees aren't eligible for or wouldn't be given, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's the environment that I work in. I have for decades, and that's my niche within the world of finance. So enter the investment policy statement. In addition to all the rules and laws and regulations and things that govern how those types of plans have to work, designed for the mutual benefit of all, there is often an investment policy statement. If you haven't asked for it, well, I'm not going to assume that it's universally available by all employers, but I think that a lot of employers would be willing to share with you what an investment policy statement looks like for your company. But basically what that does is it defines the parameters under which the investment decisions are made. And there are all kinds of different ways it might be shaped. There are some companies out there, and this may sound strange to you 401k folks, that make the investment decisions for you on behalf of the beneficiaries. If you're a public employee, that's common. You think of it that way. You might have a public employee retirement system, or PERS for short, where you just put money in and you may not even have choices, or you've got very limited choices, and the managers are selected for you, or the investment is done for you. By the way, as a side note, that is an area of just massive amounts of government. I won't call it corruption. A lot of it probably is, but universally it's an avenue for Manipulation. I'll just put it that way, because you're talking often about billions of dollars, and the people who are interested in getting the billions of dollars steered toward them are willing to do all kinds of stuff, not all of it legitimate or legal, in order to get that money. But that's a total side note. We're coming back to the investment policy statement. Without some sort of guide rails and parameters, it could go anywhere and do anything, and some of it could be really, really bad. And having that investment policy statement makes a lot of sense. Not all 401ks have them, but the ones that do, I think, probably end up better off, especially if they're actually implemented well. And so what that looks like, it's a document that says, here's how we're going to run the thing. It just basically says, we're going to go out and try and find the best, most suitable managers, like mutual funds and things like them. And we're going to implement some certain standards for gauging whether or not they're good. It could be any number of different things, or all kinds of different resources come into play to analyze what's good versus what's not good. But once you start looking at investment policy statements and you understand how they work, and I've been involved in building and developing untold numbers through the years, and sometimes they're already pre-formed and generated and implemented, and they're just sort of given to me, and I have to make sure that they're applied universally and appropriately across the board for all the different investments. But where it gets kind of fun and it gets really interesting is when I get the opportunity to go in and help build and develop investment policy statements. And we can talk about what the needs and interests and purpose are of the company, of the individuals tasked with running it, what they like and don't like, and what sorts of things we're going to bring in as metrics to gauge success and failure. And there's a lot out there that's available. And people don't generally think in those terms, but really, candidly, I wish more people did. When you get your 401k enrollment booklet, for instance, or you get that annual statement that shows the fees on it, or you get your quarterly statement that shows you how your investments are doing, good or bad, etc. Understanding what takes place behind the scenes, and part of that's building an investment policy statement often, understanding that can help you to be a better, more savvy investor. And on a related note, I do keep going back to the notion that more retirement plans out there should give you more control over how your money gets invested. Especially if you're listening to this show and listen and tune in consistently, my objective is to inform you about the harmful woke stuff that's out there. It is a trap that's set, and I do believe that there are lots of really harmful bubbles that exist, and they consistently have the effect of draining from average rank and file small investors and ending up with more money in the pockets of mega investors. And that's just no good. And add to that, over the last, I'll just call it the Biden administration, there was a push into mega globalist, ultra large cap companies. These global companies received the lion's share of funding, the money that keeps businesses flowing and operational. And small business venture, what I call free markets really almost ceased to exist. They were just sort of limping along on life support, while mega companies just sucked up all the oxygen in the room. And that's bad too. If you have an investment policy statement, if it's implemented well, it's the type of thing that can catch that. So let's say, again, going back to the example that I gave, let's imagine for a minute that you're at that boardroom table and you have 1,000 employees. Those are your colleagues, those are your friends that you work with all day, every day, and it probably includes your money too and how it gets invested. And at a certain point, or maybe a couple of points during the year, you might pull out the investment policy statement and look at it and assess, how are our managers doing? How are the investments holding up? And it should, if done well and reasonably, prompt you to look into the effectiveness of all the different managers. And when you start doing that, if more people, more companies, more 401k, IRA, etc., had done a successful job of doing that during the Biden administration, I think we would have much less of a bubble. Many more people out there should have and could have caught the bad actors funneling the money into effectively virtually the same investments. Now, I can't just leave that right there. I do have to clarify what I mean by that. If you go back to the episode that I did many months ago called, well, there's Globalist Bubble, and there's another one that I did. It's titled something like Investing in the Sameness. But what we've found, and I do believe that I've clearly, unequivocally captured and illustrated, a large number of these investment managers out there, and that means like mutual funds and things like them, have a variety of different sounding names, but what they've been doing, unfortunately, is kind of, I'm sorry to say it, but it's kind of duping the public and subterfuge. They have been allowing all kinds of different sounding mutual funds to invest ultimately in a very small number of companies. And so I've shown it. I even did a slideshow once. I went to a financial news website called Kiplinger. They're a news publication. And I pulled up their list of top 100 mutual funds found in 401k plans. If you didn't see that episode, it's very revealing. It shows that I took something like the first 30 some of those mutual funds and drilled down and showed the top holdings in them. And the top holdings in many of them, and many of them were issued by the same company, the same financial services firm that has multiple different mutual funds, may have an array of different mutual funds with different sounding names, but ultimately inside what you're invested in is nearly identical. That's a major problem. It means that the people, your colleagues, your workers, your fellow employees are way less diversified and way more focused in and exposed to a bubble than they may realize. Now, the investment policy statement should do a good job of prompting you to catch that sort of thing, especially if you have a competent and, dare I say, preferably independent financial advisor who works with you at the plan level. Because I do believe most retirement plans out there have at least one advisor who comes in and talks about the quality and successes of the different investments in there. Well, there are many out there, and it's unfortunate, but in the small plan marketplace, and I want to define that as maybe 500 or fewer employees, and especially a smaller total investment value of maybe 5 million and under, those advisors out there oftentimes just take shortcuts. Like they will maybe have only investments from some cheapy investment shop out there. So they're all the same mutual fund company and they're all cheap. Well, that's done to give the appearance of trying to fight for lowest price. But what that ultimately does is robs you guys of opportunity for potentially much better managers. And it also allows opportunity for some of those managers to heavily consolidate into a very small area of the marketplace. So when you look at all of just think for a minute of the number of companies that are available to invest in all over the United States and all over the world. Now, why in the heck would anybody subtract almost all of them and invest exclusively where everybody else is investing and it's already run up and hugely inflated stock price? That's not where any sane investor should be investing. That's where the investment policy statement is supposed to kick in and sound some alarm bells. Plenty of advisors out there don't do a good job of cultivating, following, and adhering to an investment policy statement. Well, I do believe that President Donald Trump gave us a little gift, actually a huge gift. On February 21st, 2025, he came out with the America First policy statement. You can see it. I've just made it into my green screen background here. I will include a link to this in the show notes because this is, in my opinion, the single most important hidden document, the single most important fundamental document probably, of his career. Here's why. At the end of the day, when we see the behaviors of the far left, and that has to do with the alleged manipulations of voting machines, it has to do with the mandates for all kinds of medical interventions and all those sorts of things. And when you see the published pornographic books being pumped into K through 12 education, behind all of them is money. There's lots and lots of money that is moved around. And in short, I want to give you a shortcut answer so you understand where I'm headed with this. If you take away that funding, it ends. All of the woke bad stuff. Yes, we do have conversations about some outside actors from outside the country who are allegedly influencing some of these riots and protests and all those sorts of things and damage. And it would be up to law enforcement to step in and block the flow of funding and those activities. And I think we're starting to see it finally in 2025. We went through 2020, and it still boggles the mind that we allowed so much destruction and violence in our country, damaging, looting, burning, and the death and destruction was outrageous. But that's legal. That's the realm of legal and illegal activity and catching culprits and the bad guys. What I'm talking about is not only taking money away from the bad companies and interests, the bad countries, causes, and companies that are woke left, anti-capitalist, anti-American, defund them, but also redirect that money into the next thing. Well, that's what this is. Donald Trump is talking about taking the money and investing it into great companies that are going to be the next new thing. That's been lacking for years. We have had dramatic underfunding of free market capitalist enterprise. The developing the seed funding of new business has almost completely evaporated. You add to that the fact that during COVID, there were mass numbers all across the country of small businesses that couldn't survive. They collapsed. Well, we've forced ourselves into an environment right now, unfortunately, where we have not only a bubble where most money is kind of surreptitiously invested from 401k, IRA, et cetera, into this small number of companies that are just making so much money, it's breathtaking for them. But we have just drawn out and taken the oxygen away from small business free enterprise. Well, this document talks about flipping that. That's America First. That is bringing back business and jobs and society and funding and making America militarily, economically, biologically, medically, culturally insulated and, excuse me, I shouldn't say insulated, making all of us a better, more solid country where we have manufacturing, where we have medical industry, and we're making our own things for our military and our police, and we're developing and cultivating our own pharmaceuticals within the United States. All of that should be happening. And you look at the opposite. What we have now is an environment where we have money that's being funneled through offshore managers, and we're buying fundamental mission critical things from China and sometimes from our enemies like communist China. We should not be buying the things that we need in order to survive and thrive as a country from sometimes our adversaries and enemies. That's just not right. So this investment policy statement redirects things and puts the money back where it belongs into free market economy and helps small business to start, thrive, and flourish. Because whether you know it or not, companies have to have capital in order to continue to grow and evolve and develop and thrive. All those companies that you think of anywhere in the world, all of them at some point started as a concept. And it takes time and a nurturing environment and money and resources for them to grow and flourish and turn into the next new big thing. We'll never have that if the only companies that get funded are the mega established, ultra globalist mega cap companies. And relatedly, many of those companies we can clearly see now are opposed to our traditional American values. They're opposed to Western civilization. We should not be funding them. Let's defund the woke and put that money into where it belongs, which is small business enterprise. I applaud President Trump for developing this investment policy statement. And stay tuned. One of the things that we're doing in connection with this is we have developed and are sharing for free, anybody that wants it, a template investment policy statement to be used for you. Yes, I know that the example that I gave is institutional investment policy statement, and that's where it's most common. But there are plenty of individuals out there and trusts, individual families who use an investment policy statement. It's a way for you to communicate with the people that you work with in your financial life to tell them what you expect. It's a way for you to tell your broker or financial advisor, financial planner, this is what you want, this is what you expect. They can either take it and follow it, or you find somebody else who will. This is what it takes. We, the people, need to take our funding away from the woke. It's great that you go and boycott these companies when they do woke stuff. Fine, keep it up. I like to actually say vote your values, but whatever you want to call it, feel free to boycott. But it doesn't do much good if you're boycotting a company while you're also funding and financing it through your IRA or 401k plan. This investment policy statement, adapted for our use at UnWoke Academy and shared freely, is our chance to tell the world what you expect for your investment dollar. I hope that you find it useful. This has been another episode of UnWoke.Academy. I'm Jonathan Broadbent, your host. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to tune in for another exciting episode.